Meeting will now come to order. We'll begin with introduction of members and seating of alternates, and we'll begin with town staff.
Yes, Lauren Wright, recording secretary.
Dan Beret, Town Planner.
Okay, thank you. And for commission members, we'll begin introductions starting on my left.
Victoria Chet.
Bob Ellsworth.
Chantel Foster.
Tom Bransfield.
Robert Taylor.
So Tom, would you please be seated for Carol?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Next item of business is to accept the agenda, and we do have a revised agenda for tonight. And that revision is to receive in an application 22-22. So may I have a motion to accept the amended agenda, please?
So moved.
And a second?
Seconded.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, the amended agenda is accepted. Under our regular meetings, we have 2 applications listed. Neither of them will be discussed tonight. The first one is 2216, which is a site plan review for a food truck hosted by Core and Restore Yoga. And I believe the applicant is Wei. And then the next one is application 22-20, and this one is further work is being done to respond to some comments made by the engineer, so that will not be discussed tonight. So, next item of business would be to receive in applications, and this is the application I mentioned before, application 22-22, 34 Gospel Lane. Proposed special permit modification to increase gym business floor size to 4,044 square feet in existing building. Application and property of MJS Realty Ventures LLC, map 31, lot 26, zone IP. Anything we should know about this then?
No, it's just a modification from what you heard last meeting. Yeah, with the correct square footage.
Okay, and that'll be heard
Yeah, next meeting, yeah.
Okay. Okay, then we move on to new business, and there is a presentation scheduled for Desegregate CT. So.
Hi, that's me on WebEx or Zoom. I'm not sure where you guys can see me, or if can you see me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I would like to share my screen. I'm not sure if I can because I'm not a host. Does anyone know how to make me a host just so I can share my screen?
Yeah, we're working the magic here on this side. Yep.
Okay.
You should be all set now.
Okay. While I get that set up, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Christabel Calabretta. I am a third-year law student and a legal fellow at Desegregate Connecticut. And I'm going to talk to you all about Work Live Ride. I also can't, for some reason, I still can't share my screen. Which is, okay, there we go. Can everyone see what I'm seeing right now?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great. So I'm going to make that bigger. So this is just my information. Again, Christabel Calabretta. I'm a legal fellow at Desegregate Connecticut. A little bit about us. We are a pro-homes coalition of neighbors and nonprofits. And we believe in creating abundant and diverse homes and communities, promoting economic prosperity, social inclusivity, and environmental sustainability. Those are our main missions.
Excuse me, Krista, I don't mean to interrupt. We're just seeing a loading screen right now. Is that?
Yeah, it showed up and then it disappeared.
Yeah, it showed up and then we got a loading screen.
Do you see it now?
There we
Yeah.
go.
Okay, I guess I just can't put it in slideshow mode. Okay, that's fine. So this was the slide that I was just reading off of. The next slide is our approach that we take, which is an all-of-the-above approach. At Desegregate Connecticut, we like to kind of hit everything all at once to make sure that that our actions are meaningful. And with that, we aim to build more kinds of homes, not just single family, but multifamily, affordable housing, act with all levels of government, work in and with diverse coalitions, so that everyone's needs are being met within the communities that we are serving. And Work, Live, Ride, which is the bill that we have introduced in this legislative session, and which has been discussed with the governor, and Desegregated Connecticut has been put in the governor's budget, and we are hoping to have a hearing on that soon, just to kind of get everything started. But Work, Live, Ride is our bill, and it centers around transit-oriented communities. So what those are center riders and pedestrian-oriented areas. Transit-oriented communities offer diverse homes and jobs and create exciting and sustainable places to live. New England in and of itself is transit-oriented between trolley systems and public transport. It has been ingrained in New England's character, and Desegregated Connecticut wants to preserve that in our state. So today, Connecticut is definitely transit-rich. These statistics are from like the middle of COVID, so some of these transportation systems that are highlighted may not be running anymore, but most of them still are. Connecticut is definitely a commuter state, which is why we are aiming to have some people on board with this bill and have some discussion. Last session, we learned a few things. The most important one being that mandates are unpopular. So with this plan that we have for Work, Live, Ride, it is not a mandate, which I will get into in a minute. So our plan is Work, Live, Ride, accessible jobs, affordable homes, safer streets. And what Work, Live, Ride is a vision for a more prosperous, equitable, and sustainable state, a policy framework to align local and state planning goals, which essentially means that this is not going to just be something that is mandated for all towns, cities, and municipalities. We are looking to have more of a discussion that incorporates each town that wants to opt in, what their needs actually are. Is also a call to action to be the change you want to see in your community. So if you are passionate about having a transit-oriented community, this is definitely the bill to be supporting. So the framework that I was just discussing is basically once a town or city planning and zoning commission decides to opt in by creating a transit-oriented community district, the Office of Responsible Growth, ORG, will partner with that planning and zoning commission on design and implementation. So no one in this process will be alone. And then the ORG will direct discretionary state funding for planning and design, infrastructure improvements, and home creation within that district. So what that means is basically that there are a bunch of different grants that are discretionary funding, and if a town or city opts into into Work, Live, Ride, then they will have a sort of priority for certain types of funding in order to work with the ORG to be able to accomplish their goals. So this outlines the 3 different types of phases, so planning and design, infrastructure improvements, and home creation. I think they're pretty self-explanatory, so I won't read every single bullet. All of the towns and cities fall into one of these 3 tiers. Portland falls into transit community, and ORG will provide assistance on planning and identifying funding sources for any necessary infrastructure improvements that are discussed within those conversations between the P and Z and the ORG. So this is just a list of musts when that district is created in order to opt in. So a reasonable size and near transit station, I know that Portland falls into that requirement, must include as of right development and mixed use, mixed income housing developments, must include affordability levels based on state housing needs assessment, must not include parking requirements, lot size minimums, or residency restrictions. And this is just a schedule for affording housing requirements. When I looked at Desegregate Connecticut's map, Portland was in the high opportunity level and strong market activity. If a community doesn't choose to opt in, you will not be punished. This is just an information session, but if Portland chooses not to opt in, it just means that they will be ineligible for certain discretionary state funding, which is tied to infrastructure. And if a town or city opts in but doesn't create that district that we were just talking about, they must reimburse any planning funding received and become ineligible for the program, which basically just means that Portland has to follow through on actually going through with the work, live, ride before getting any funding. And a town or city cannot retroactively reduce density in a district, or they would face penalties. Penalties meaning getting funding taken away most likely if they receive it with the impression that they have a certain density in the district. These are the discretionary funds that I was mentioning, just very specific grants that are related to transit-oriented development, and all of these grants can be found on, they have their own websites and discuss what is available and how much money is available for each grant and outlines the requirements. This is Work Live Ride's plan to expand the ORG. So funding for full-time land use planners, additional funding for existing ORG transit-oriented development district program to serve as top-up fund, statutory authority to determine town and city TOC district compliance, which would basically just hold towns and cities accountable for their work, live, ride duties that they are agreeing to when they create their TOC district. Statutory authority to coordinate other state agencies providing discretionary funding, and establish TOC district guidelines, public resources, and data on planning best practices, which would basically just help everyone be compliant and understand kind of what's going on. Public resources and transparency is also something that Desegregate Connecticut highlights. And that is my presentation on Work, Live, Ride. If anyone has any very detailed questions, I would recommend reaching out to info@desegregatect.com, .org, I'm sorry, but I can also take any questions if people have any kind of on the surface questions right now.
Well, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So what I'm understanding is you're talking about creating a zone. Is that what I'm getting?
It's not, I don't believe it's creating a zone. It's essentially deeming Portland as a district, but it's not creating a new zone.
Okay.
I don't think.
Then I didn't understand it.
Because I was thinking along the same lines. We're being asked to kind of designate an area of town that would meet these district
Did you hear that, Krista?
Yeah, I can, so, let me just go back through
Yeah.
my slides.
If you could maybe go back to the slide where it says, the opt-in, it's got the words opt-in, the town can opt-in.
Right, community district. I will be honest, the zoning, land use and property was not my best law school subject. So in terms of creating a zone, that's not how it has been described to me, but if that's how you are hearing it, then that's probably what it means. I thought that creating a district meant something different. But it does, now that I'm like reading it in that way, then yes, it does seem like Portland would be asked to create, would opt in by creating a zone along a bus or rail route.
Okay, and,
Okay, yeah.
and so, if that's the case, what is the general, is there kind of a general size of what that area might be?
So the workload ride provides that it has to be a reasonable size, which isn't really, too detailed. When I talked to my supervisor about this presentation today, and I asked him what a reasonable size would be, he didn't really have a clear answer, but I think that it would just mean something that's not like if you're not designating something that only a few homes would have access to.
Right, and I believe I saw a slide that said this district or zone would have to contain certain types of housing,
Right.
Right.
within the town. Thought I saw a slide that said that.
I had a slide that, discussed the different types of, the 3 tiers, one of them being transit community, which laid out a few numbers by population, but I don't see.
There was another, there was, yeah.
I think it had certain, like you couldn't have like minimum lot size or something like that.
Oh, right, the must and must not.
Right.
That's the slide that says that it doesn't have a specific size, it says, it must be a reasonable size. And then must include as of right development and of mixed use, mixed income, housing developments, must include affordability levels based on state housing needs assessment, must not include parking requirements, lot size minimums, or residency restrictions, but there's no hard size limit or minimum.
And so is that just on the residential side of things, or would that apply to commercial properties in that area?
From what I understand, it's only residential, but I am gonna make a note of that question
And it does say mixed use.
It does, so that's
Oh,
wrong.
yeah, mixed use.
Well, if it was a straight commercial development, that's what I'm curious about.
Yeah.
If you couldn't have parking requirements for like a retail store that went in or something like that. Cause they're trying to promote more of a multimodal transportation, so walking and biking and bus, mass transit, I think. But that's something we would certainly, we'd kinda have to know before we could determine, or you
So-
could determine what you wanted to do.
So we're talking about creating a zone, so creating rough regulations to say that we're allowing this and we're welcoming this in a certain area.
I think so, around, say, like our bus routes that come in
Yeah,
from
Right,
Middletown.
Would this be
in
like-
certain areas.
Because it's a little different for Portland, because we have mostly flag stops for our buses. We don't have set bus stops necessarily. So, you know, we get pickups and drop-offs where, you know, wherever the bus route goes. But, you know, you would determine, you know, where along the bus routes, because last I knew, it comes in, goes to High Street, goes up High Street, I think then goes down Bartlett, comes back down Main Street, and then one part loops down 66 all the way to East Hampton.
But, and that's one of the things that I guess I wanted to comment on. In this presentation, it sounds as though Portland
Yeah.
is like a thriving bus community, and, I mean, that's just not the case. So, I just wanted to throw that out there.
Okay, yeah, that wasn't I'm sorry if that's how it came off, that was not the impression that I was trying to, give. I know that, I think I know that you guys have like 2, like, buses that run. It's just an area for opportunity,
Right.
that's what I was
Okay.
trying to, that's what I was trying to say.
So would this be like an overlay zone,
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking, yeah.
if we have none? Yeah.
Sounds.
But the no lot size is just, you know, so I don't know if that means you could buy we have our 10,000 square foot zone, if you could buy one of those houses and then try to subdivide off that. So like, would you still have other zoning requirements that would be tied to that lot size, like say frontage on a town road or lot depth, things like that? Or are you just stripping away all of those things in that particular district?
All I know is that in that district, there wouldn't be able to have parking requirements, lot size minimums, or residency restrictions. Those are the only.
So I guess, like, so right now, our smallest residential zone is 10,000 square feet, but you still have to have a minimum lot depth and street frontage. So while you could get rid of, say, minimum lot size, if you didn't get rid of lot depth requirements or street frontage requirements, it would kind of defeat the purpose, because you could say, oh, you still have to have 75 feet of street frontage and 100 and some odd feet of depth, and you'd force the, you know, unless it's a really irregular shaped lot, you'd still be getting a lot size minimum without kind of, you know, meeting the intent.
The other
Yeah, the intent,
criteria
yeah.
would result in the.
Yeah, you'd get the same outcome, which would kind of go against the intent of I think what you're trying to do.
I'm a little confused on where lot size would play into this, because we're talking about established neighborhoods
Right, but
that we're gonna
put this
put
on.
an overlay on, saying this is a transit-oriented district. And then that is so that desegregate CT can lobby for funds to be directed towards this area. of town.
Well, it would change the development pattern in that zone. So if you didn't have lot size minimums, the idea is that you could have denser housing. So you could have smaller lots, so you could have 5,000 square foot lots or 4,000 square foot lots that would contain, you know, either a single family house or a duplex. And no parking requirements would also then allow a smaller sized lot to have, say, a multifamily apartment on there, or even a duplex, or conversion of a large house to a 4-family that we allow. So I think the idea is partly to increase density, to create more opportunities for housing in those areas that have transit associated with them.
Yeah, but when you put it
But-
that way, it sounds like they want to more focus on a rail network and
Yeah.
making it accessible, so you don't need a car,
Well,
except that Connecticut's absolutely terrible with that.
Well, so some of the idea was,
Chicken and the egg.
you had like the new busway going. So around those stations, I think within a quarter mile or half a mile, they were having transit-oriented development, because the idea, you could have denser development because people could walk to the busway, and that would be their transit use, and they could ride their bike or something like that, so they wouldn't be tied to a car necessarily. The same would be with the train stations, with Metro North.
But for this to work, you would need a very scheduled, regular bus service.
Right, so we do have
24
one
hours
that,
a
I
day,
think our
7
buses
days a
come,
week.
yeah, I think our buses come every hour for, part of the day and Saturday. I think bus usage in Middletown is higher, and certainly the people who utilize the bus here in town, it's integral for them. But, the numbers aren't as high as I think many people would like, but, I think that's what they're trying to go for. I think they're trying to allow for increased density and more housing opportunity, in areas where there are bus lines.
So we,
Or-
we wouldn't be able to, like, extend the bus line to Glastonbury, because
The-
on the way to Glastonbury, you wouldn't be able to
Well, yeah, so we're not,
get rid of.
yeah, you wouldn't be in charge of what the mass transit options are. It's just kind of working with what we have.
Right, but what I'm saying is you wouldn't be able to, take away lot size and parking restrictions.
It would just be
Um,
within that zone. So like if you say you made it on Main Street and part of 66, where the bus line is, that would be where there wouldn't be lot size minimums anymore. But that's why I'm curious about like a commercial development, and there wouldn't be any parking requirements for any development that goes
Which
there.
really would push mixed-use development.
Possibly.
If it were
I
to,
think multifamily, I think.
and multifamily.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
But,
or apartments.
but if you were to have this zone, you would have, the ability for basically everybody in that zone to convert their house into a multifamily house.
Well, so you
Right.
can right now, you can right now, but you need to meet parking requirements
Right.
for like a two-family. And there's certain restrictions on when you can convert to a four-family in certain parts of
Right,
town.
but that's what I'm saying, everybody would be able to do that with no restrictions.
Correct. And the other, I guess my other question is like on lot coverage.
Yeah.
And again, that goes back to, there's no minimum lot size, but we have, you can only cover a certain amount of a lot with buildings. So would lot coverage not be part of the equation anymore? So I guess that's another question. Could you get up to 75% lot coverage, where, we don't allow anything close to that right now? And then, then you get into how you're gonna handle that drainage and all that kind of stuff, since you're adding more impermeable surface, so. I guess, yeah, I don't know, would you have more information to provide the board that you could send to me and then I could distribute?
Yeah, absolutely. I jotted down, these questions, about other zoning limitations, how are commercial developments implicated, and, lot coverage also. I'm gonna give these to my supervisor, and I think I have someone's contact, the town planner's contact, who would be the best person for me to.
Yeah, send it to me.
follow.
Yeah, send it to me. I'm Dan, I'm the town planner, and then I
Okay,
can
great.
disseminate anything that you provide to the board.
Can you?
Okay, and I'll also send you those slides with the follow-up questions, Dan.
Yeah, it'd be great. Rob, you had something?
Yeah, could you also add to that list a little bit more in-depth review of like what the financial incentives actually are for participating in this? Because I know you grazed over like there's grants and different funding for it, that benefits for it, but knowing what those financial incentives are and how we can, if we do consider implementing it, how we could actually like take advantage of some of those things. I think we do have a couple
Yeah,
brownfields in town.
Yeah,
Tell
to
me about
touch,
it.
touch on some of the grants I saw, one of them was the Brownfields grant, which we're taking advantage of on Brownstone. Other was a steep grant, I think, which I think that's what we're using for sidewalk and sidewalk improvements, so it is money that the town taps into, so I'll have to monitor this with you guys to see exactly if this passes and what discretionary funding is impacted, and then,
Yeah,
maybe we'll get some direction from the Board of Selectmen at that point as well, as to what they might wanna see, but ultimately, I think Krista highlighted that it'll be your decision in the end as to what the policy will be.
So that
Okay,
was,
so I'll add, just to give more detail on the grant funding that's available, I'll add some ballpark ranges for some of the grants that Portland is likely to be using, like steep grant, or the Brownfield one, and I'll add a few more. I just did some memos on some of those grants, so I have that information that I can add.
So my questions are next steps and what is there a timeline? What are the next steps for us to take as a commission?
Well, I think this needs to make its way through the legislature and get signed into law,
Yeah.
and then once that happens, that
This is informative
Yeah.
at this point.
yes.
We should be having our hearing within the next 2 weeks, and then we should have a better, actual timeline. And we can, follow up with that too, and Dan, I'm sure you'll be, now that you know about this, I'm sure you'll be monitoring as well.
Yes.
And when you send Dan that information, can you provide us with the bill number, just so that we can look it up and actually review it ourselves too?
Yeah, I don't know if we have one yet, I think we have to wait until after our hearing, to get one, but I will double check on that, but I believe that we need to wait for our hearing in order to have a bill number, that was
Okay.
what I was told today.
All right, do you guys have any more questions, or?
Nope, not at this point.
All right, cool.
Well, thank you all for your time.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Okay, we will now move on then to old business. First item is electric vehicle charging stations.
I don't have anything for you at this point on this. We will be having to amend the regs, based on that state statute that we were talking about. So, but we will be adding to the parking regulations that if you're doing something over 30 parking spaces, you gotta add 10%, electric vehicle charging, facilities, and that'll just be on new applications. I talked to John, any modifications of existing ones, I don't wanna get into that. They're not, I don't know if the bill is 100% clear on that, but I think it's just, you know, Brainerd comes in, they want a modification, we're gonna tell them we want 90 electric, or 70 electric vehicle charging stations. I
Sure
think
they'll love that.
it changes the math a little bit, but, I think a place like that will probably have some for their residents, so.
Wasn't there a portion of that bill that allowed residents who lived in that qualified area to request it?
Yeah.
So it might be something to,
They're probably gonna do that anyway. I mean, if they're thinking, if they're trying to be proactive and really thinking, I mean, wouldn't you, if you were a developer, wouldn't you just?
if they knew about it. But, I mean, I
Well,
don't.
I'm just saying, like, thinking about amenities that you would
Mm.
wanna put in for your people. I mean, you wanna make your place attractive to people who are gonna live there.
Mm.
I mean, why wouldn't they wanna
I
at
agree.
least put in a few of them? I mean, maybe not 10% or whatever, but you'd think that that would be something that, if they're gonna put in a pool, you know?
Yeah, this
put
could be
in
part
an
of the
electric
amenities.
charging
Yeah, amenities
station.
package.
I would think
You
Brandon
know?
Place would
And
have
where you live
several.
is the ideal place to charge your
Right.
car,
Right.
Live or work, I guess.
Bulbs.
Okay, so more to come on that. Next item then, riverfront overlay zone.
So again, it's just, I don't know if you guys had ideas. Generally, and this came up in EDC the other night. So we got the conditional, grant for the $500,000 additional for brownfields to help further clean up down the river properties. Now, that grant's condition is that we get a developer on board, I think, by the end of the year. So an RFP would probably go out in a couple months, you know, seeking this developer. So if we did want to add any uses to the overlay zone, you know, I guess one that would probably stick out in my head would be retail of some sort, and whether you wanted to craft that in some way that would be allowed. You know, you already do have water-dependent uses that you can interpret in that zone, so something, I guess, that retailed something that was, you know, dependent on the water, like if, I don't know, it was a fishing store and there was a pier there, maybe you could argue something like that already. But really, we have the industrial zone as the base zone. You have the riverfront overlay zone in that area. That does encompass more than just those couple properties. So if you wanted to add something to that zone, we should probably move on that in the next month or so. At least get an application done in the next month or so, maybe by the end of March,
Okay.
so that we could have a public hearing and get that
So
on
that's
the
your
bo-
suggestion, adding retail, because we
Well,
have
that's
the
something
other-
that we
we
don't
the
have.
other stuff,
But a lot of the other stuff is there.
right.
What else is, I got,
A reasonable thing to ask if maybe we all, at the next meeting, came with a list of ideas that we each have, that we could just, throw out on the table and maybe discuss as a group. If each of us bring 3 or 4 ideas,
I don't know if I have any ideas.
Well, it's okay if you don't, but if you do have ideas, bring them.
Right, but, that way we could just start discussing, cause I've been thinking about it, and I have some ideas, but I think it would be great if, we all try, maybe put our heads to it seriously for a week or 2, or, and just came together and put them on the table, and then started a discussion, because if you want something in March, that's.
Right.
Well, I'm just saying that would
Well,
make sense. I mean, we don't
right.
we don't have to do anything.
Right,
Um,
but if we don't do anything, we have to do something, because we need the money, right?
It would be nice to get the grant, but it would also be nice to get the developer on board who would,
Right,
who
so,
would,
so
who
we
would
really,
take that on.
we do have to do something, really. We don't have to, but it
So,
seems to me to be irresponsible not to.
Couple comments. I think that's a good idea to do that, to ask people to come forward with their own ideas. Just my only comment is, it seems like there was a much larger focus group
Right,
that went through the same
Right.
exercise and came up
and
with.
didn't really.
Well, so my understanding, and I talked to Ryan, is part of that was they were, are we on camera or no?
Yes.
Okay, that's just fine. One of the reasons they chose restaurant was because that was gonna maximize the amount of tax dollars that were gonna come out of that property. So brewery is technically allowed there. There are other uses. I mean, really, and, I think Victoria idea is great. If you guys wanna look at the uses that are in the industrial zone right now,
Yep.
the uses that are in the riverfront overlay, kinda see what, the area that riverfront overlay encompasses, and anything that's missing, we could stick that in there. You do have that water-dependent use, which is very broad, and you could interpret that, how you'd like, as to what is water-dependent.
does it have to be industrial or?
Well, right now, the underlying zone is industrial,
Is
and the overlay zones is
So
riverfront
that's your
overlay.
limits right now?
But I would just
Yeah,
simply,
it's the
I
industrial
would,
zone, whatever the riverfront overlay provides. on
right,
top of
and
it.
that's in section 7. So I
Yeah,
would,
and it's-
I would simply add it to the riverfront overlay zone. I wouldn't suggest adding retail to the industrial zone. I would,
No,
yeah,
you
yeah,
add
so,
it to-
so, yeah, I would, whatever's missing from industrial and riverfront overlay, you think it's appropriate in riverfront overlay, suggest that.
But what I'm getting, we could look at commercial, what's allowed in commercial and. see
Oh, yeah,
what's
any other uses,
appropriate.
any other uses at all, even uses that aren't in commercial.
Okay.
Anything at all,
Anything.
anything.
Sky's the limit.
Right,
Yes.
but the
Skydiving.
thing, the thing that I just kinda keep thinking about is the way it's constructed, it's in a flood zone too, right? I mean,
Correct.
Isn't that the other issue?
So that's a challenge to the
Right,
development,
right.
yes. So you
And
have
I
a.
think that's like the bigger thing.
Right, so the
bigger
only
issue.
idea is if you added some more uses, you're just gonna broaden the field of potential people who may come. And give them more options.
And they would have to meet the
They have to deal with
requirements
the-
of being.
of this flood zone.
Yeah, so,
flood zones.
yeah, they're gonna have to have a raised building down there.
They're gonna have to.
Yeah, so, that is what it is. So there's certainly other challenges besides potentially, the limitation on use.
Yeah, I think that's the bigger challenge.
But I also would strongly, though, recommend when you're looking at uses for the river, is think about the whole overlay to make sure, like, okay, that's appropriate for that whole zone, because it might not just be those properties. Somebody could take advantage. It's not a huge area of the riverfront overlay, but, just to keep that in mind.
Right, it
Really all
would
the way
be for the
down to
whole
the-
of
To
the,
the bridge. I mean,
Right. So,
If all of that were to go away, what would we want?
right.
well, could you also say, could you have, something that specifically says where riverfront overlay meets industrial, where those two zones coexist, these things can happen.
I'd prefer not.
But can you?
We could explore that. I don't wanna say no, but we could try to do something. I'd certainly wanna talk with our attorney just to make sure.
Because something might come up that we think would be great there, but it wouldn't be great there.
Well-
And so then we,
That's actually, I like that idea.
so we wouldn't approve it because we wouldn't like it over here.
So
We
that
would
might,
definitely
Yeah, I
want
like
it
that.
over here.
that might be possible. So certainly, when you're brainstorming, I don't wanna discount anything that you guys might think's a good idea or might move the town in the right direction in that area. So if that's an idea you have and we talk about it in 2 weeks and that's something you wanna, explore further, I'm happy to reach out to different people.
Okay, so we all have homework. Due date in 2 weeks. Come with a list. Okay,
Sir, yes, sir.
please. And just for information, who will be developing this RFP? Is it EDC?
I have a feeling that's gonna possibly fall on me to write this.
Oh. And my next question is.
And maybe John Giskowski, our
Okay.
consultant planner.
How does it, just general question, how does an RFP like this get advertised or promoted or get the word out to people?
So we're doing a digitization right now, so I guess,
Say
we're
that again?
digitizing, well, it's the digitization? I don't know. Digitizing all the land use records, so that's something that, we've put out. It's due March 3rd, and so that's the first step to get to online permitting. We're digitizing all our files, then I gotta do another RFP for GIS. So we have a full GIS website for the town, and then we'll do an RFP for an online permitting system.
So I just question how,
We have an RFP and a
How-
button on the website.
How does this RFP get marketed?
marketed, that's what I was trying
How,
to
Yeah,
say.
well, that's
you
just
know,
a
where does it
regular
go? We just
process.
put it out?
I'm not sure what they did with the restaurants, but I believe it goes on our website, a notice gets published in the paper, and then I
mean, is
think
there-
there's a state website as
Yeah.
well.
Realtor Association?
And then Tom posted on a state website.
Developing.
And developers
associations
and
we
everybody who
send to.
does municipal work, they look at this. I mean, we've gotten, more than a dozen people inquiring about digitizing our files, and they're not all local. I mean, some of these people, I talked to somebody who was probably in England the other day. So business people know to go there to look for business opportunities. So that's generally what they do. And we did have people, although we didn't get a formal response, we did have some feedback from people who did see our original RFP.
We have 2 RFPs on the website right now, one for the digitization, the other for the solar panels at the transfer station.
Dave says it really well.
I just question, is that enough? You know, Little Town of Portland, Connecticut website and the River East.
Well, no, there's a state website as well.
State.
The state has a website. Yeah. So,
And something like, water would be a good search word.
Yeah,
You know,
it-
for somebody who wanted to have something on the water.
I could ask Ryan. I can ask Ryan, for further information on how the last one was done.
It's probably none of my business, but.
Good question.
No, but I think it matters how we word it, right? So, because how we word it is how it's gonna be posted, and so I think it does matter, it's a great question. Right, 'cause
No, it's a good question. So I will try to endeavor to get an answer for you guys
Okay.
next time.
Thank you. Okay, so everyone's got their homework just to remind. So then,
Alright.
we'll move on, to staff report.
I'm gonna hit these both at once, if it's okay. We really don't have an update for Brainerd Place. It looks like they have the pad site ready for that first building. I believe they got comments back from the International Code Council for the plans for Building E, which is the first apartment building. And they are addressing those, and once they're addressed, they'll get the formal go-ahead, and they'll get the building permit issued. Second to correspondence, we don't have correspondence, but as you all know, Liz Tripp, our longtime land use administrator, or front office administrator, whatever you want to call her, she's moving on to bigger and better things. But I would be remiss to not note that she's been really important member of the land use office for a long time. She's kind of the glue, the linchpin. She's more than that. That really holds the office together. And while I'm very happy for her, it's certainly a big loss for the land use office, because she's an outstanding employee for the town. So she will be missed, but I just I want to publicly thank her for her service to the town, because it's been nothing would get done in that office without her. So.
And I would second that as well, Dan, and I believe there have been times where she went above and beyond her roles and responsibilities when there were times of staffing shortages in the office. So I would like to publicly thank her for her service and wish her the best of luck in all her future endeavors. I'm assuming that position will be put out.
It's been posted internally. I don't believe we're gonna get any takers internally, and then we'll see what the world provides. So, but yes, she's been doing a great job trying to fill me in on the stuff I don't see that she does, which is even more than I knew. And she's left a very detailed sheet as to what her responsibilities are and how to kind of go about a lot of this. And I know she's requested an exit interview with Ryan to kind of just rehash what she does and just make sure that the land use office is in the best place that it can be now that she's departing.
She'll be missed.
Did I cut someone off? Did somebody want to say something further? I felt like I cut somebody. No? Okay. Okay, nothing else under staff report?
No.
Okay, then we'll move on to public comment. We'll now hear any brief comments from members of the public, either here in the room, which there is no members of the public, or if anyone is on chat. Is there anyone on chat who would like to?
We'll see. I think we have somebody on YouTube, but we need them to participate on the Zoom in order to have that chat documented.
Yeah, he's gonna, I heard it.
All right, so I guess
Okay, would you have
we'll
someone
just
who'd like to comment?
pause for a moment.
Sure.
All of these videos are on YouTube
Right, but how was
because it's simulcasted at the same time.
Oh,
Because we
really?
have a great IT department.
Oh, I thought that was only after the meeting was done and that it was, I didn't realize it was simulcast.
Oh yeah.
Oh, you're right there.
No, see, I don't like that at all. I don't want to look at myself, Dave. Oh, is he on Zoom now? Yeah, sure.
This-
Yeah, if he's on video, yeah. If he's,
Well, can he, will his voice come through on the Zoom? Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Hi, Ellen, we hear you.
Good, good. Probably just as though you can't see me, I can't see you.
It's on.
I was pleased to witness the presentation tonight, and it sort of prefaces what I was going to talk about in any event. And that is the importance of paying attention as the politics of the time keeps changing and focusing more and more on housing. significance of the RiverCog's study and final report on recommendations for improving the traffic flow on Route 66. In fact, I wrote a letter to the editor for River East on the same topic, basically saying that I'm frustrated because I've seen very little attention to any kind of activity in following up on that final report from RiverCog. What we're looking at is the potential, as is described in the final report, of augmenting the traffic on Route 66 such that it would give the town of Portland the ability to establish, or I should say reestablish, a town center. And that would be vis-a-vis a bypass, which is one of the potential report findings, that would free up Marlborough Street and Main Street, essentially allowing the town to take total control over portions of Main Street and Marlborough Street. And that would have an enormous impact on future development, certainly on the ability to promote and create much more housing density in that region, or that district of town. That would, I think, very likely coincide with what's forthcoming with what you've heard as a presentation tonight at the Bride. And so I want to urge each of you to take advantage of looking at the summary of that Route 66 Corridor Study Report. It's available on RiverCog's website. Unfortunately, the town still has not posted it on the town site, and I don't think there's any link at all on Portland town site for that report. I may be wrong, but I don't think there is. But it's an enormous potential, and one that's just been languishing now for nearly a year and a half for sure, without any real engagement that I've been able to discern from the town officials. And I know that Ray is very familiar with RiverCog's operation and having been there before, and I served on the planning commission as a delegate in Portland to RiverCog. This is serious stuff. A lot of money was spent, a lot of time was spent, a lot of public participation was engaged. The report is just flawless, absolutely flawless, and the recommendations, I think, have real merit. It talks about moving traffic that now dead ends essentially on Main Street and directs it along the old airline railroad that brings it right underneath the bridge into the cloverleafs that are essentially there right now. They'd be expanded, but there's already a cloverleaf roadway that would allow that traffic to just essentially bypass that intersection of Marlborough and Main. And the impact on, just look at Brainerd Place, which currently, as it's now situated, and without any changes in road, is going to be, in my opinion, just an amazing congestion of traffic. You're going to have 500 people living in those two apartment buildings, trying to get in and out with a new traffic light on Marlborough Street to allow them to come and go. At the same time, you've got traffic, as we all are experienced, coming over the bridge and trying to get to the bridge. It's just unimaginable that something as significant as the changes that are recommended and very heavily studied are being neglected. I just want to let you know that sooner or later, I hope that decisions are going to be made that are going to influence an acceptance of bypass, and that in turn is going to affect the whole fabric of what is now our Main Street area, that I would hope would become a true town center for Thornton. So, I got chastised last night for asking questions of the Board of Selectmen. That's not what public public comment is supposed to be. So that's been in my statement, unless anybody wants to ask me a question. Thanks.
Thank you,
Thank
Ellen.
you.
No other comments?
No other comments? Okay, on chat? Okay, thank you. Okay, then we will now move on to approval of the minutes from February 2nd. Present at that meeting were myself, Victoria, Chantel, Rob, and Ken. So we do not have all the participants here, but we do have a quorum. So we can go ahead and approve these.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, minutes are approved, and may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A second.
Seconded.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Okay, the meeting is adjourned.